Hi, today we are going to talk about vitamin D and why it's so important for people living with rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm also going to reveal my vitamin D results from a test that I had done earlier on in the week. Mm. So I'm delighted to say we've got Evie from Evie Nutrition with us. Hi, Evie.
Hi, thanks
Hi.
for inviting me on to speak.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm so pleased that you agreed to have this discussion with me today. And Evie, obviously you're a nutritionist, a gut health expert, and you know your stuff. You really do.
Thank
And
you.
for people that don't know me, I'm Charlotte, and I was diagnosed with RA in 2015. And earlier this year, I decided to make some changes to my diet and lifestyle. And the impact has been hugely positive on my RA. So good, in fact, that it's made me want to share my journey to help other people that are living with the condition. So, Evie, thank you, thank you so much because you've been fundamental in my transformation. Um, so I was delighted when you agreed to come and do this with me today. So thank you very, very much. And
Absolute pleasure.
I just wanted to say that I think vitamin D is something that I first kind of really learnt about when I was first diagnosed because I was taking steroids, took them for quite a long time, and my rheumatologist said, I should really take vitamin D to protect my bones. So I've kind of always associated vitamin D with bones. But I've recently found out that, there's more to it than that. And I just wondered if you could
So
sort of
much
share
more.
with us about what vitamin D is and, why is it so important to everybody? Because it's important to all of us, not just people with RA.
Absolutely. So sadly, I think it's probably one of the most misunderstood vitamins. And
Mm,
I paused before I said vitamin because actually it's a hormone. So that was probably one of the first problems with vitamin D is it's just misunderstood and how important it is in so many body systems to function normally. It's been overlooked for centuries, I'd say.
wow.
And especially in the UK, it's a massive problem because we live in the Northern Hemisphere. And obviously, you remember we would have been told growing up that we must keep out the sun, protect our skin, put
Hmm.
loads of sun cream on, cover up, protect your head, protect your face.
Yeah.
And although they are good things to do if you're fair skinned in, blazing heat in summer, it's kind of instilled this behaviour that we need to keep out of the sun. And we don't get enough sun anyway, and that's how we make our vitamin D. So vitamin D is made from the sunlight
Right.
um, in the melanocytes in the skin. So the sunlight hits our skin and our skins convert that sunlight into vitamin D. But actually the whole process is really complex. It's much more complex than just getting your vitamin D from the sun, which is why some people, and you might resonate with this, Charlotte, is
Mm,
they know they've been out in the sun, they know they've had a good summer,
yeah.
but they won't have optimal levels. And there's many reasons for that.
Mm,
But one of the reasons is it has to go through quite a complex process. So it has to be converted by the liver and then the kidneys before it actually becomes a viable substance that we can use. But
right.
vitamin D, to answer your question, is important for bone health, as you said, but
Mm.
it's absolutely critical to our immune systems. So that's why it's so important. It has a modulatory effect on our innate and our adaptive immune system.
Wow. And I guess that's why it's so important then for people with RA because of
Yeah,
the
so when
immune
you think
system.
like exactly, so rheumatoid arthritis being an inflammatory condition that's
Mm,
driven by an autoimmune response, so it's an autoimmune condition where
mm,
it's an inappropriate immune response to something in the body. Um,
mm.
Vitamin D modulates that. It stops that inflammation getting out of control. So it's a bit like if you think of it as a Goldilocks hormone, it makes sure that you're not getting too much inflammation, but it also makes sure that you are getting enough to control inflammatory responses.
Wow. So it's really, really is important then for people living with RA. definitely.
It
Yeah.
really is critical, and it's correlated with so many conditions. So when you think it's correlated with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, you know, your ethnicity also will depend on how much vitamin D you can actually get from the sun, how much circulating vitamin D you're likely to have.
Mm.
It's really important that we check our levels, especially going into winter in the UK.
Yes. Yeah, because we're, even if we are outside, we're largely covered up, aren't we? And we've just got our faces showing, so that might not be enough. And I was just wondering, if somebody is deficient in vitamin D, are there any signs, like other than testing, would we know if we might be deficient in vitamin D?
I think you would, but I think it would be overlooked because there's so many reasons that we might feel fatigued,
Yeah. Yeah.
low mood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, even insomnia, so people who don't sleep well are correlated to have lower levels of vitamin D. There are certain conditions that predispose you to having lower vitamin D as well. So the sort of main symptoms that I would see in clinic for low vitamin D, most commonly fatigue is the most common one.
Wow.
Um, I see it often in anxiety, depression,
Right.
um, and joint aches and pains.
Right, yes. And you could just put that down to the fact that you've got RA, couldn't
Yeah,
you? You know,
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, it's really interesting stuff. And you say that vitamin D is largely from the sun. Can you get it from food or anything else, or are we completely dependent on the sunshine?
You can get it from food sources, but it's quite low. So you can get
Right.
it from egg yolks, from oily fish, mushrooms. So there are some foods out there, and of course fortified foods. So if you're on an alternative milk, for example, you'll see at the bottom of the carton usually it says fortified with vitamin D. Some cereal products also might be fortified with vitamin D.
Mm,
Um, but it's unlikely that you'll be getting enough, especially through the winter, on food sources alone. And you know, the government are under increasing pressure to change their recommendation around vitamin D for
mm.
that reason, because we're now seeing evidence, tons of it, especially since COVID,
Yeah, yeah,
evidence coming out about how important vitamin D is.
yeah.
And in the UK, we're just not going to get enough from food sources.
No, and I know because I actually met you before COVID and you were banging on about vitamin D then.
There's
Um,
got a soapbox about it, any opportunity.
yeah, well, you were right. You always are. I just wondered about supplements then, because I've had a look about how much we're supposed to take, and there's a lot of conflicting information out there. As an expert, how much do you think people should take, or is it different for everybody depending on their circumstances and perhaps how deficient they are in it? Is there an
Well, because
sorry?
otherwise you're just guessing, aren't you? You
Yeah.
know, we just be guessing. It's really difficult. It's a really good question, Charlotte. And the problem is, you know, I see such a myriad of clients come in with a selection of symptoms that in the back of my mind, I think we should check your vitamin D levels. And
Mm,
they all come back different, but they all mostly come back low. And
mm,
then, you know, how would I recommend a specific dose that captures everyone?
yeah.
And that's why I'm such an advocate for testing, because I just don't know what that would be. And in fact, I popped onto the NHS website yesterday
Mm-hmm.
ahead of speaking to you to see what their recommendations are. And the
Mm,
vitamin D page hasn't been updated since 2016,
wow.
which is really
Mm,
worrying in light of COVID. And
yeah.
their recommendation is still 400 international units a day, which
Mm,
is nowhere near enough for us in the winter.
no. And is it different for adults and children as well?
Well,
Do children take less or?
well, yes, you'd put a smaller amount in a child, but
Yeah.
again, it's still guesswork. And the NHS page recommends the 400 international units for children over the age of 1 and adults. So they've kind of like put
Mm,
everyone in the same basket.
mm,
It's slightly worrying, I think, in light of how important we know it is for our immune system, and with this second wave of COVID coming. And I know I'm not going to go on about COVID because we're talking about rheumatoid arthritis, but
yeah.
you're talking about an immune problem.
Yeah,
So it's,
and people that are living with RA are, quite conscious about COVID, and we're worried about it anyway. So we want to be doing everything that we can to keep ourselves as healthy as possible. Um, so in terms of testing, then, I guess, yeah, like you say, the only way to really know is to be tested. Now, shall I talk about my test results now, or should we talk about how people get tested first? What do you think?
well, I think tell them about your test results, and then we'll tell them what their options are with testing, because give people as much advice as possible to how they're going to get their tests so they can
Yeah.
find out like you did.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, as I said earlier on, Evie, you've gone on about vitamin D testing a lot, and so I had my blood tests done at my doctor's last week, and when I was there, I just said, "Oh, don't suppose you can do a vitamin D test too whilst I'm here?" And I was lucky they agreed to it, and I got my test results, and I was surprised that I'm actually slightly deficient in vitamin D. And it does surprise me because to me,
I'm surprised.
you won't be. But September doesn't seem like that long ago to me, and it's pretty mild where I live. And I was in shorts and short skirts and things in September, and it's quite scary to think that we're middle of November now, and already I'm deficient in vitamin D, because I'm sure that probably in the summer I'm not, because I do like being outside. I'm outside a lot, so I'm sure it's probably not a problem in the summer. But to like I said, September wasn't that long ago, so to already be deficient is scary, because I assume as we get more into winter, my levels are just going to be even lower. They're going to keep decreasing. I guess that's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, so we store it in the liver and you'll just keep depleting through those stores.
Yeah.
So it's advisable that everyone take a vitamin D supplement in the UK through the winter, but that as a recommendation from your GP, that would be probably what they'd say. But I would probably layer on top of that and say, I don't know how much that would be to keep you at an optimal level through the winter. And so it's not a very expensive test, and you can actually ask your GP for the test. But I think most GPs are likely to say, because they're under an incredible amount of stress and pressure,
Of course.
especially at the moment,
Yeah.
they're most likely to say just take a supplement.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's general advice,
Yeah.
but I like to be quite specific about that and make sure that your levels are optimal. So I would always recommend testing, and the test's not very expensive.
No. So I think, if somebody's got RA and they're going in for blood tests anyway, then try. They might say yes, but they might not. I was lucky. And if somebody's doctor then isn't willing to do a test, what are the options for people? How can they be tested to find out their levels of vitamin D?
Yeah, so there's quite a few different laboratories that would give you a test kit for vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
I can only recommend the ones that I work with, because I work closely with laboratories that I know and trust, and we do webinars and I follow their research. So I trust the labs that I work with. I can't vouch for anyone else's
Of
tests,
course.
but you
Yeah.
can get a home test kit. So the test kit that I work with, it gets delivered to your home. It's a very easy to use home test kit that's a finger prick test kit. So it's like, has a little lancet in it, a bit like a diabetes glucose check.
Okay.
You prick your finger and then you put a little spot of blood on the card, and the card goes back to the laboratory, and then the results come back to me, so that I advise you, if you need some supplementary vitamin D, how much that's going to be, so that I can advise you safely to get through the winter, so that we make sure that you've got optimal levels of vitamin D.
Brilliant, great. And to give people an idea of cost then, if they wanted to come to you to get a test, how much is a vitamin D test?
So the test kit that I use is £45.
Okay.
It's delivered about within 1 to 2 working days.
Yeah.
And the turnaround time, so the results would be back in about 10 days. So it's quite a speedy process.
Yeah, okay.
And it's just a great thing to get ahead of the winter when we go into the deeper, darker winter months.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think also from my point of view, having been tested, it's really nice to actually know where I stand with it, because I'm not wondering anymore, am I deficient, aren't I? Do I need to do something? You know I need to take that supplement. And since having this test result, I've been taking it every day without fail. So, that's only got to do good for my health. So I'm really pleased that I found out. And just for anybody that's curious, I just thought I'd share my vitamin D levels. So according to my doctors, we should be in a range between 80 and 150. I don't know what NMOL what that measurement is.
That's nanomoles per litre.
Okay, so it should be between 70 and 150, and mine's 70. So it's just outside of that range, but I guess really you don't want it at 80.
Is the reference range 70 to 150, or is it 80
It's
to
80 to
150?
150, and I'm 70, so I'm just outside of that range. But I'm kind of thinking you probably
Yeah.
don't want to be at the bottom of that range anyway, do you? If the bottom is 80, you don't want to be 80. You want to be further up. I'm assuming.
I think 100 nanomoles per litre is optimal. So you want
Yeah.
it about 100. I rarely test anyone that is at 100.
Really?
Very
Wow.
rare. I mean, in this summer alone, a client came to me and she was suffering with all those typical conditions that you'd expect with vitamin D deficiency. The most critical one she had, I thought she was really depressed.
Really?
Was really low mood, and she'd been out in the summer, she'd just been on holiday, she had joint pain, so she couldn't exercise, she
Right.
wasn't, the whole thing is a bit of a vicious cycle.
Oh,
And
completely.
let's check vitamin D levels, and hers was the lowest I've ever seen, and hers
Wow.
were 13 nanomoles per litre,
Wow.
which is a severe deficiency. And so if she hadn't have done that test with me,
Yeah.
she would have been going down the route of severe bone problems as well.
Yeah.
No wonder she was so low, and she had joint pain and the whole thing. So it's really worth getting checked.
Definitely. Well, I couldn't agree more, particularly having done it myself and, got surprised by the results. I think I've probably discussed everything that I wanted to raise with you. Is there anything else that you would want to add that might be useful for people to know about vitamin D?
I don't think specifically. I'm a real fan of not guessing
Yeah.
and getting the test done, especially if you have those clinical features
Yeah.
of rheumatoid arthritis, or if you suffer with another autoimmune condition. So don't forget, I said it's correlated with a lot of other autoimmune conditions.
Of course.
It's correlated with hypothyroidism, diabetes, obesity, ethnicity, if you've got dark coloured skin. So it's really important that you think about, are you a bit low on energy? Do your joints ache? Are you sleeping well? And do you have any of those other symptoms or conditions that might actually be an underlying deficiency of vitamin D? It's well worth checking.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. And every little thing that we do, can only help us and help us deal with this disease better. So I really appreciate all of your time and the information you shared with us today. Thank you very much. And I hope that you guys watching have found this useful too. And Evie, do you want to mention kind of a bit about what you do and how people can get in touch with you if they want your help?
Yeah, so you can contact me through my website, www.evienutrition.co.uk. There's a contact form on there. And I also do a monthly newsletter full of nutrition tips, advice, recipes, and you can subscribe through my website as well for those free tips. And you can follow me on all the normal social media channels for daily updates on all sorts of research and things you might find really helpful. So follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and just ask if you have a question. I'm happy to get involved and have a conversation, because I don't think we should ignore how critical vitamin D is. And thank you very much for allowing me the time to come and speak with your listeners,
Oh,
Charlotte. I
no,
know
it's brilliant to
how,
have you.
yeah,
I
we've
hope,
worked together for a while, and how much better you're feeling. So
yeah.
I'm just so pleased to have met you and have had the chance to help.
Oh, thank you. It's yeah, I feel like I did 20 years ago and I didn't think that was possible. So it's really incredible the power of kind of nutrition and lifestyle changes. And they all sort of help each other. It's all kind of interlinked, isn't it? And just my whole life has improved. I think it's incredible. And that's why I'm sharing my journey, because I want to help other people, because I've been there feeling awful, and it's a rotten disease to live with, and I felt that there was nothing I could do about it, and actually you can do things to
Diet's so powerful for reducing inflammation,
yeah,
and quite often if you've got a condition, you kind of feel like you're stuck with that condition and
yeah,
that medication is the only way. But you are living proof
yeah,
of what we've done, where we've changed your diet
yeah,
and increased, rather than just removing things from the diet, we've actually, your diet's become wider, richer,
yeah,
more nutrient dense,
yeah,
and the power of that is, well, you're the evidence of that.
yeah.
So
And
thanks for having me.
I wouldn't want to go back to where I was. I don't think I would, I wouldn't want a couple of pieces of toast for lunch anymore. I want that salad and that vegetables. And I can't believe, a year ago that I wouldn't have believed that I would be saying this. So it's incredible. And for anybody that's, interested in my journey, I'm also on Instagram at RA_Thriver. I'm also on YouTube and Facebook. You can search on RA Thriver, and you can keep in touch with my journey and anything that I found useful to really thrive whilst living with RA. So I think that concludes, everything. I did want to actually just say, when you mentioned about your social media, Evie, that it is worth following Evie, because she does put tips on there, and there's recipes and lots of useful information. And I do think this is about kind of taking all this different information and seeing what works for you. So do that. And yeah, I think we've covered everything. So thanks again, Evie, and thanks to you guys for watching. Bye.